Greetings, I am the leader of one of the Orion groups on Earth. Today I want to tell you about the tasks that Orions are performing on your planet and share your own dreams about the fruits of our interaction. Orions on Earth perform completely different tasks, and many are engaged in transmitting their own technologies to people. This communication takes place not directly, it is realized in the thoughts of engineers and designers, heads of firms and corporations producing technologies of different directions. In fact, the support of humanity in the development of technology is the main task performed by the Orions on the Earth, the hierarchy entrusted to them. Certainly, the spiritual teachers did not transfer this task directly to us. We received such a proposal from the Galactic Council. Many of us responded and willingly agreed to go to Earth. Our desire to be on your planet was not associated with the possibility of capturing humanity, as some people sometimes think. We were not at all inspired by the way, which was painted to us from above, consisting of the technocratization of Earthlings. Despite the fact that we are fulfilling this task, I cannot say that it is the source of our inspiration. The transfer of technology is our work, which has its interesting sides, but the form in which we give you our development rather harms people than helps. In previous articles written on behalf of the Orions, it was already said that our civilization had tried all the possibilities of technology, learned their weak and strong sides. In its best manifestation, technology can really become a support for people, but for this they need to be applied somewhat differently. They should be based on another principle, and be improved on the basis of people's needs. In the first approximation, this happens. Every new development is created when there is a request from consumers. But in most cases an ordinary person who in the future will use some kind of adaptation does not create it, the developers are engaged in it. Of course, such engineers are well versed in their question, but they think on the basis of their tasks and cannot sufficiently experience the needs of consumers. Of course, each device fulfills the basic requirements of people, but each person has his own requests, and they cannot be taken into account in mass production. At us, Orions, at a certain stage of our development there was an opportunity to create technologies under individual needs, and the consumer became the developer and the manufacturer. From my point of view, this is the best way to make technology friendly, and not a means of winning energy and controlling people. Perhaps one day this principle is realized on Earth, but enough time will pass for people to impose a very narrow, artificial vision of technology, from which they will begin to create their own new developments. In fact, right now it is happening. People are given a ready-made product convincing them that it is technologies that forbid them to dream about a better embodiment of their hopes. In this case, after some time the Earth will turn into a large factory for the production of various technical devices that are not needed by either people, the Earth, or even more so Orions, who by the will of fate will supervise people. Why do the Orions themselves have narrowly focused and very primitive technologies that are only suitable for establishing control over consumers? Such developments are also enough in our worlds, and unfortunately we manage to experience all possible consequences of such control. Some of us manage to escape from the seizure of consciousness spreading through electromagnetic fields, but most of the representatives of our civilization are still under this yoke. I can now realize what happened to the Orions and analyze what is happening only because I'm on Earth, where I'm not so much affected. There are other groups of Orions, and even entire coalitions within our civilization that have been able to maintain relative freedom due to the fact that they have abandoned the main direction of development that is imposed on them, but is not their real aspiration. These Orions in time thought about what they are themselves, and why improve their technology. After all, any technical adaptation is a means for doing something, and the development of technology cannot be an end in itself. The fact that now people are organizing a technological race for the sake of creating better tools is a trap. After all, people themselves, like many Orions, do not see where they are led, and for what they actually do at all. Their consciousness is captured by interest and admiration from the new opportunities that open with the advent of new developments. But what is the purpose of all these innovations? Where will all their strength be directed? People do not yet have an answer to this question, which means that in the future technologies will be captured by forces interested in controlling people. All this is already happening now, and there is only one small chance to come to your senses in time and feel that besides technology there is something else. If technology should be a means and support for people's lives, then it is worth considering, what is the basis of life? If many people can answer this question, then technologies will naturally take their rightful place and cease to be a means of human robotization. The person will know where to send this force transferred to him and will not allow himself to be misled. In the meantime, it turns out that the whole life of people is going on in the operation of various devices, starting with installations that extract natural resources, then, industrial devices that process these materials and create the blessings of civilization, and finally, waste disposal technologies, air and water purification. People were put in front of the machine, impressed upon them that they were exploiting the resources of nature for their own needs, but in fact, not only nature but also man himself is exploited as an integral part of it. In fact, the earth itself is used, and people are simply made a universal adaptation in this exploitation. On whose initiative is this technological cycle designed for the processing of nature and its transformation into something lifeless and artificial? It could be considered that such exploitation of the earth is carried out according to the intentions of Orion and some other civilizations that transfer technology to people. However, as I said, for Orions, participation in this process is as much a trap as for Earthlings. Those Orions who came to Earth simply use, forcing them to apply what they have already mastered in the past. For us, the process of technology transfer to Earthlings is not development at all, it is rather degradation, because we need to assure ourselves that the knowledge transferred is a blessing. But this is so small part of the technology possibilities that it's even funny to talk about it. We wanted to go to Earth after another, and our real goal to be close to people was a completely different possibility. We feel that we can share with you our inmost knowledge about our inner strength, the feeling of our power. This force we see in the people themselves, we have it in common, because once upon a time representatives of Orion became one of the forefathers of Earthlings. Looking at people, we see ourselves, only still young, with burning eyes and ready for courageous deeds. When we feel your desire, we wake up and are ready to rush along with you ahead, supporting you and giving strength. We are like experienced parents who have already experienced a lot, saw a lot of good and know where to go, but at the same time manage to break firewood and therefore act very cautiously. Now Orions no longer have such a young enthusiasm and desire to act in full force, which you possess. And sometimes it seems to us that we have already tried everything and we have nowhere to strive for. But looking at you, we feel that all is not lost, and there is an opportunity to start off again on an exciting journey. In fact, every Orion as well as a person needs something to be kindled and inspired, and it is not so important where to go, the main thing is a passion in the realization of the conceived. But here our experience played a cruel joke with us. Having tried a lot, we cannot find a new direction for development. Of course, if the Orions were completely free, it would not be difficult for them to find many new goals and go where they really want. And today our inaction speaks only of one thing, that our life has long been settled in the same obsolete programs. Indeed, the civilization of the Orions is already very highly developed. All processes are very effective, and it seems that there is no point in escaping from the simplest and most effective ways of achieving the goals. These techniques in our case have become templates, which we do not even see the point of changing. This happened not only with Orion, but with any other civilization that existed long enough. Something similar is now observed in Europe, when each country has its own traditions and foundations worked out for centuries, turned out to be convenient for all its inhabitants. These people literally have no sense in changing something, because the principles of their life are the most convenient. Europeans look at the representatives of the East as small children who still play in their lives and taste it. They seem to say, nothing, play enough and still come to where we are. After all, we know that our way of life is the most convenient and rational. With these words, the Europeans confidently and uncompromisingly impose their technologies, the features of the economic system and even the way of life on the developing countries. And if you ask the average person, what does it mean to live well? Then it is likely, for example, lead to highly developed European countries, life in which is stable and orderly. But this sort of ordering of human life is the way of technocratization, its maximum simplification to complete primitivism. Therefore, residents of developing countries seeking to live in a Western way, without understanding themselves, take away their last freedom. Among them are Russians, many of whom are striving for the West, believing that life is better there. However, the modern political situation as if specifically turns Russians away from European countries. This is facilitated by all sanctions from Europe. Despite the economic complications to which sanctions are imposed, Russian citizens seem to be hinting, do not look around, think about who you are. Therefore, it is possible that the situation in which Russians are caught is not exclusively negative, and it was created by some forces specifically, with the goal of redirecting your country's development along an alternative path. Of course, the forces of managing the society have very strict control tools, so they are not sending Russia harmoniously. Managers of social processes act as a careless parent, who is easier to give a child hands, than to explain for a long time why this toy is not necessary to take. These forces turn Russia away from the Western path of development by very harsh methods, but still giving its result. Perhaps such a political situation will allow Russians to become one of the first nations to think about the true destiny of people. For the Russians, neither the example of Western countries, nor the path of the Eastern states are suitable, especially since both these development directions have now merged into one, becoming a process of technocracy. After all, if you look at how the ancient states with the greatest spiritual heritage, such as India and China, are developing now, then you will not see anything except technological innovations. Perhaps, Russian people, not wanting to move forward so narrowly and primitively, will begin to develop differently. But the question is where to direct your aspirations? Perhaps my messages will help some people to find such a direction that will become the basis for their personal development, and if these ideas are spread, it will inspire the whole Russian people. Of course, I do not exclusively appeal to Russians, and I am sure that my book will be of interest to everyone, regardless of their nationality and place of residence. But perhaps it will be easier for Russians to understand me, because your spirit is especially strong, and I feel that the true qualities of the Orions are especially vividly embodied in you. Therefore, what I feel is an opportunity for alternative development for modern people. It can be especially easy to originate in your country, and then begin to spread among other nations and in other states. Speaking about the alternative way of people's development, I mean the direction on which many Orions have already gone, and which in their time was inexpressibly inspiring. But our civilization has faced many difficulties that prevented it from developing freely and moving along the desired path. The main problem lies in the globality of our Federation, numbering hundreds of planets inhabited by the Orions, and thousands more colonies, which are the younger civilizations of our galaxy. Globalization leads to the fact that all the individual interests of the Orions are pushed into the shadows and replaced by the main direction of development, which as a whole is not bad, but not suitable for the majority. It consists in existence at the level of virtual reality, which has already become a natural habitat for many Orions. In the ideal case, the virtual environment should become a personal space in which an Orion or a person can create any innovations or inventions. It concerns not only technological developments, but also any dreams that are then embodied in the physical world through technologies or using other techniques. Is not it true that something similar has already been realized on Earth? For example, a person creates a three-dimensional model of a building in virtual reality, calculates its best configuration, creates a list of necessary details, and then this project is transferred to builders. All this has already existed for a long time in our civilization, but the Orion can make the whole cycle of it himself, create an individual project, taking into account all the necessary subtleties, and then click on the button, launching a complex technological process for the embodiment of the conceived. At first glance, every Orion is almost a magician and has the ability to realize any of his dreams created in the virtual space. However, the virtual environment itself, which has already become for many of us the space of our thoughts and dreams, is not real. The virtual environment is created by the electromagnetic fields in which we live, and hence our thoughts are controlled by the forces that create these electromagnetic fields. The electromagnetic field, in turn, is supported by technological devices supposedly serving to satisfy the requests of the Orions. It turns out that those adaptations that were originally created by us to improve our lives, have become a source of control over our civilization. Now I will not go into details about how and why it happened, but the main thing is that the virtual environment that was originally supposed to become a clean space for planning new processes was caught up. As a result, Everything that the Orions come up with is distorted by those forces that control our civilization. In general, this does not lead to horrific and destructive consequences, and outwardly our life proceeds quite peacefully. However, internally every Orion has already got used to the fact that he lives completely differently than he would like, and most importantly, that most Orions already begin to forget about their real desires. Can you remember yourself if all that you show is a virtual environment in which you seem to fall asleep and see a dream that is not relevant to reality? However, when an Orion looks at a person's life, he feels that everything is not lost. It makes sense to wake up and start acting. It was this desire to show its deep desires that led the Orions to Earth, and although they formally fulfill the task of technocratization, their hopes are connected with the ability to support the strength of people. We feel that you still have enough opportunities not to go completely into virtual reality, remaining yourself. We Orions still remember their real capabilities, but the technological fields of our civilization have already become so strong that most of us cannot take advantage of their own merits. That is why many other civilizations perceive Orions as unfeeling and unemotional, and believe that our strength is only technology. However, they see in us only what we are allowed to share with other races, and they really made us a sort of standard of technocracy. At the same time, on Orion itself, there is a great variety of ways of development, which, although secondary, are manifest. Despite the fact that our civilization is subject to globalization, it still has many unique directions in which the Orions express their essence. Of course, if the Federation of Orion continues to develop as it is now, then all the unique directions close to us will be strangled, and there will only be a way of turning the Orions into electronic beings living at the level of virtual reality. However, the Orions themselves are still alive, and communicating with people remember themselves real. In our ordinary life, we simply have nowhere to apply our living power, because everything we are allowed to think about is artificially. But finding ourselves on Earth, we find ourselves in other conditions and can find a worthy point of application of our efforts. Orions can connect their aspirations with the support of people, because the people themselves still have a living perception and did not completely go to virtual reality. Under the virtual environment, I mean not only the world of computers, but also the society with its strict framework, not invented for people. Although every person exists in society, a large part of his being is still free and supports his faith in the best. This part of the human being is incarnated in soul communication, in love for nature, in the pleasure of comprehending the material reality around him. Either way, a person still has a need to maintain contact with the physical world, and this helps him not to go completely out of the illusion imposed on him. One of the main properties of a person is the ability to feel the truth, which may not always be joyful, but it helps to stay afloat and not lose oneself without a trace. For us Orions, striving for truth is also one of the most important values, and thanks to this we were able to preserve ourselves. Each of the Orions is like a fortress or a warrior defending his lofty ideals. The first thing seen from the side is the armor of the warrior and all the defensive structures of the fortress the Orion built for self-preservation. But inside the Orion is completely different, and perhaps he himself has almost forgotten the times when he manifested himself freely, because his life became a battlefield. Nevertheless, he knows exactly what he is fighting for, and when he can take off his armor. It turned out that Orions feel themselves on Earth, because in your world there are no such serious limitations as in ours. But in order to reveal themselves, the Orion needs a worthy point of application of their strength, and people's support can become such a true goal for self-disclosure. The human society is still a dead environment, although it contains a living basis. The only thing that will help the Orions to awaken, while at the same time best supporting the people themselves, is the disclosure of personal qualities that are common to both our civilizations. If a person can feel his innate strength, then the Orions will awaken, seeing in new manifestations of people themselves. Therefore, despite the fact that my intention is connected with the support of people, in my endeavors, I aim to help the whole of Orion. How do I imagine the way people could go to feel their strength and confidence again? To do this, a person needs to imagine the opportunities that he would like to have in the future, forgetting for a while about technology. In fact, all that you are now provided with technology, you can, and moreover, the range of your possibilities is much wider and richer. Now the technology feels a special power, And if you imagine what could be further, it is breathtaking. Many science fiction writers already predict that in the future a person will be able to create his own reality by modeling not only the social environment, but also the natural one, and then embody it with the help of technology. A person can become the creator of everything that happens, not dependent on the conditions in which he was originally placed, and therefore will have absolute freedom for creativity. Perhaps it is to this that man desires to strive, and improves technology for his own liberation from the conventions of physical reality. But trying to get free with technology, a person immediately falls into the trap created for him, because for the liberation he uses artificial tools. It is impossible to get out of the swamp without having a real fulcrum, because all other imaginary supports will sooner or later turn out to be equally unstable and unreliable. A person improves technology in order to feel his real power, but this way only leads him away from such an accomplishment. The only thing that will allow a person to touch himself is to be sure that he has this power from the very beginning, regardless of the availability of technological adaptations. To feel it, one can imagine that the whole power of modern civilization is supported not by the power of electric motors and electronic technologies, but by the will of the people themselves. You can imagine what a person's confidence will be when he, without any technology, can easily move around in space, create warm and comfortable homes, provide himself with food. If you look to the future, then the innate power of a person can spread to the natural environment and become a support for it. In this case, a person will become the creator of the physical reality in which he lives, and out of control of technological means will lead his development not on an artificial path, but in the best scenario that intuitively felt always. When a person is confident, he knows in advance where he needs to go, when he does not have questions about what is justice, honesty and kindness, when he can easily make the coveted choice. But when all the reality around assures a person that he is not the master here, then certainly he ceases to trust himself, considering that this is not a place for his manifestations and aspirations. People are forced to ask all the time how to act, and in order not to do anything superfluous, he has to deliberately restrain his ardor, without hurling himself at global goals. Is not that the way most people live? They are given not the work, not the house, not those spouses, not that life, although every person internally knows what kind of life he would like to live. If we continue to ask the outside world what we should be better, then we will continue to wrap up in a circle, forcing ourselves to be anything but ourselves. Therefore, one must seek his own power only within himself, and having felt it, begin to manifest outside. You will ask, but where should we show our strength, if the social world is not created for us? On the one hand, the society is a trap, but once upon a time it was created to support people, and it has a good beginning. If people can feel their power, they will probably be able to awaken this deep foundation of society. Everything can happen naturally, proceeding from the needs of people. While it is easy for a person to manipulate, the forces of the society do not think about his real aspirations and impose their will on him. But as soon as the person becomes discriminating to what is happening and believes in himself, he does not want to go on about these forces. Many egregores of the society will have to adjust to the new demands of people, and thanks to this the social environment will begin to change. Perhaps what I'm saying now sounds fantastic, but it all depends on whether people can remember their roots. We are talking about our common ancestors, who acted boldly and freely, and then there was still no social system and technologies in sight. Nevertheless, such people did not need additional adaptations to carry out their ideas. They used the power of their intent and energy of inspiration. Although these creatures were formerly called Orions, I named them without a reason, because I feel that many of their qualities are manifested in modern people and have become universal. In the following chapters, I will describe many of the valuable qualities of our ancestors, while giving examples from the lives of modern people, and you will see how much your power is available, because it is used by almost everyone. Usually this force is used unconsciously and becomes an instrument in the hands of a society that uses man as a unique and universal tool for achieving his goals. But if a person realizes his power, he will make it less controllable and will be able to use it at will. The person will continue to act in society, but will cease to be a toy in the hands of random forces, which are great in the social system. That is, the opportunity to become free does not mean that people will start acting against the society, destroying old foundations and arranging revolutions. It's just that a person becomes confident in his abilities, and this confidence will lead to an awareness of one's own worth and an understanding of the right direction of development. People no longer want to go anywhere, and sooner or later their desires will lead to the fact that their work, family and any activities will acquire real meaning. The first step for such a cardinal change is very simple. It is enough to gain a sense of inner strength that brings you closer to our common ancestors, and all further actions will be formed from this feeling. Therefore, in the following chapters, I will try to pursue the main goal, to convey to you this state, which will activate in you our common genes. Feeling this energy within himself, a person not only activates his own qualities that connect him with the Orions, but with his own state will start to activate other people, and so a chain reaction will begin to revive the Orion roots. Further, in spite of the fact that this update will start on Earth, this wave will be picked up by the Orions and will strengthen the general enthusiasm that will begin among the people. I wish all of us that our communication through the chapters of this book has already initiated the process of activation. Let people remember the real connection with Orion and gain the former confidence, and the Orions themselves, seeing in their people their own deep manifestations, with inspiration will begin to support your bold aspirations. Sincerely, head of one of the Orion groups acting on